All right, welcome back to Check the Tenders. We're diving deep, again, into the world of Czech public procurement, but this time, I think we need to tackle the big question. The one that's probably on every international business's mind.
Yeah, I can guess. How do I actually prove I've got what it takes to win these public contracts, all that experience, reliability, the whole package?
Exactly. Because it's one thing to have a fantastic product or service, but it's another thing entirely to convince the Czech authorities that you're the real deal, right?
Absolutely, and the Czech system is very specific about how they size up businesses. It really comes down to proving yourself in 4 main areas. Think of them like qualifications.
Okay, 4 areas. What are we talking about here?
They're like hurdles, and you've got to clear every single one. First, you have to tick the boxes for basic eligibility. Then there's professional eligibility. We also look at your economic qualification. And finally, we can't forget about technical qualification.
So it's more than just having the best product or service. It's about proving you can back it up with, real substance.
Exactly. It's about trust and that you can deliver what you promise. Let's start with basic eligibility. This is all about showing them a clean track record, a reliable business partner, someone they can count on.
Okay, clean track record. What exactly does that mean?
No major skeletons in the closet, recent criminal convictions, for example, or a whole bunch of outstanding debts. Those are definite red flags. We're talking taxes, Social Security contributions, even health care.
So it has to be clean in both Czechia and my home country. That makes sense. Don't want to be working with someone who's skipping out on their responsibilities somewhere else.
Exactly. And it used to be a pretty strict black and white situation, but there's been an interesting change in the law recently. It might not be an instant game over anymore if there's something in the past.
Really? So you're telling me it's not an automatic disqualification if there's a little, shall we say, blemish on the record?
Well, there's a catch, of course. You have to prove you've cleaned up your act. Let's say there was a tax issue a few years back. If you can provide documentation showing it's been completely settled, you're back in good standing, then you're back in the game.
So it's about transparency, owning up to it, and showing that you've learned from it.
Precisely. And when it comes to what you actually need to submit, it's pretty straightforward. Think criminal record extracts, confirmations from those tax and Social Security offices. Essentially, any paperwork that proves you're running a legitimate operation.
So I can't just dust off some old certificate from 10 years ago. It has to be recent, right?
Exactly. It's all about up-to-date information. Gotta assure them that you're meeting the current requirements, no shortcuts. And these documents usually need to be issued within the last 90 days. But don't worry, we'll get into all those specifics later. For now, let's move on to the next hurdle. Professional eligibility.
Okay, so we've proven we're reliable. Now we have to show we've got the skills to actually do the job.
Exactly. This part is about proving you are legally allowed to perform the specific work you're bidding on. This often means providing things like extracts from relevant registers, business licenses, maybe professional certifications, all depending on your industry.
So if I'm bidding on a construction project, I better have those licenses and certifications in order, or I'm not even getting to the starting line.
Precisely. And here's a key difference from the basic eligibility we talked about earlier. For professional eligibility, you're actually allowed to rely on subcontractors or partners to meet some of these requirements.
Wait, so I don't have to have everything in-house. That could be a game changer, especially for businesses who are new to Czechia or have a really specialized niche.
Absolutely. That's where strategic partnerships can be a huge advantage. Let's say you're missing a specific certification. Well, team up with a company that has it. You leverage their expertise, and it makes your bid stronger.
That's smart. Okay, so we've talked about being trustworthy and then proving our professional qualifications. What's next?
Now we're diving into everyone's favorite topic, money.
Ah, yes. Economic qualification.
Yeah.
Let's show them our pockets are deep enough, right?
Yeah. The contracting authority wants to make sure you're not about to go bankrupt in the middle of their project, leaving them high and dry. They need to be confident in your financial stability.
Okay, so how do we prove that? Do they want to see bank statements from the last 5 years or something?
Not exactly. Usually it's about providing those financial statements, yeah. But it's more about showing a pattern of stability over time.
Okay, that makes sense. But what if you're a newer company, a startup that hasn't been around for ages? Is that a problem?
It can be a factor, yeah, but not always a deal breaker. They might ask for a minimum annual turnover just to show you have some experience handling a certain level of business. But the good news is it's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
So they're not going to expect a brand new company to be pulling in $1 billion a year just to fix a leaky faucet.
Exactly. There are limits to how high they can set the bar. And for some types of services, they can't even require a minimum turnover at all. It's about making the playing field as fair as possible.
That's good to know. There's some flexibility there, at least. Okay, so we've tackled trustworthiness, professional chops, and the financial side of things. What's the final hurdle to clear?
The grand finale, technical qualification. This is where you really get to shine. It's all about showing off your expertise and proving why you are the best choice.
Okay, time to bring out the big guns. What kind of things are they looking for here?
Well, it varies depending on the contract. Sometimes they want a list of past projects you've aced, detailed descriptions of your equipment or quality control systems, maybe even proof that you've got a certain number of experts on staff.
So it's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly. And here's where things get a bit more nuanced. You see, customer certifications from previous projects are actually only mandatory for construction work. For other types of contracts, a solid list of relevant projects you've worked on might be enough. But again, make sure those projects are actually relevant to the contract at hand.
So if I'm trying to win a software development contract, I don't necessarily need to show them a certification, but I should definitely highlight my experience building similar software in the past.
Precisely. This is a chance to get creative. Instead of just a boring list, how about a case study that showcases how you handled a super tricky problem? Or, maybe, for software, a short demo video of a similar app you built.
So bringing it to life, giving them a real feel for what we can do.
Exactly. Show, don't just tell, right?
This has been super helpful.
Right.
Okay, so we've ticked off those 4 key areas: basic eligibility, professional eligibility, economic qualification, and technical qualification. But before we move on, anything else we need to know about these documents?
Absolutely. It's not just what you present, it's how you present it. Imagine the contracting authority. They're probably drowning in a sea of bids.
So make it easy on them, right?
Exactly. Make sure your documents are well organized, labeled clearly, easy to navigate. Think of it like a good story. You want to guide them through your qualifications, highlighting the most important stuff, making your strengths really pop.
It's about respecting their time. Hey, we've made this super easy to review.
Exactly. And we'll dive into the nitty-gritty of that presentation and formatting in the next part of our deep dive. But for now, just remember, presentation matters.
Mm-hmm.
Don't underestimate it.
It's like showing up for a job interview. You always want to make a good first impression. Well, folks, that's a wrap for part 1 of our deep dive into proving you've got what it takes for those Czech public contracts. Stick around, because in part 2, we're going to get even more practical. We'll look at real examples and strategies to make your bid stand out.
We'll be back in a flash. Welcome back to Check the Tenders. Before the break, we were talking about presentation, and I think there's a lot more to say about how to make your bid really shine.
Oh, absolutely. It's easy to get lost in the weeds, gathering all those documents, and forget about making it easy to understand. We don't want all that hard work to just disappear in a pile,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. A well-structured bid, maybe even visually appealing, it can make a huge difference. It shows that you're not just checking boxes. You've actually put some thought into this. You know, the contracting authority, they're looking at a ton of bids. You want yours to stand out for the right reasons.
So how do we do that? What are some practical tips?
Well, first things first, organization. Just like a good book, your bid needs structure. Think of those 4 qualification areas we talked about: basic eligibility, professional eligibility, economic qualification, and technical qualification. Use those as your headings.
So they know exactly where to find each piece of information. No searching required.
Precisely. And then within each section, you can use subheadings to break it down even further. For example, under professional eligibility, you might have subheadings for business license, professional certifications, and so on.
Okay, so creating a hierarchy, making it digestible. Can we use things like bullet points, tables, maybe even bolding to make key information stand out?
Absolutely. You want to keep it professional, of course, but no need for a wall of text. Those visual elements break things up, make it easier to read, and it shows attention to detail, which reflects well on your company.
Like saying, hey, we get it, we're making this easy on you.
Exactly. Now, here's another important tip, especially for international businesses. We've been talking about clear language, but think about the language itself. Make sure your bid is in flawless Czech.
Ah, right. It's got to be in Czech. Not just good information, but presented perfectly. That could be tough for some international businesses.
It can be, yeah. If your in-house Czech isn't quite there yet, think about professional translation. It's an investment, sure, but it's worth it to make sure everything is clear, accurate, and no language mistakes that could hurt your credibility.
Okay, so we've covered organization, formatting, and the language itself. Any other ways to really make our bid stand out? To go above and beyond, I mean.
Remember those examples we talked about in part 1? Don't just meet the minimum requirements, exceed them. Like, for technical expertise, instead of just a list of past projects, how about a full-blown case study showing how you tackled a really tough challenge?
Bringing it to life.
Exactly. Or for software, maybe include a short demo video of a similar app you developed.
Showing them instead of just telling them.
Precisely. And, this thinking outside the box, it can actually benefit your business in the long run, too, not just for this bid.
Yeah, it forces you to really analyze what you're good at, what your strengths are, like a free business consultation.
Exactly. And who knows, that extra effort might just be what wins you that contract.
Okay, so we've really covered a lot. The details of formatting, the big picture strategy. A well-crafted bid is a powerful tool. But let's be real, gathering all this documentation can be a bit overwhelming.
True. But you don't have to do it alone. There are resources out there, consultants, online guides, and of course, we'll be here to help you through it.
That's right, we're in this together. And speaking of which, in the next part of our deep dive, we're going to tackle the actual submission process, all the nuts and bolts, giving you the knowledge and the confidence to submit that winning bid.
Stay tuned.
All right, welcome back to Check the Tenders, everyone. We're in the home stretch of our deep dive into proving your expertise for those Czech public contracts.
And in this last part, we're switching gears. We've talked about what you need to prove. Now let's get into the how to actually submit all this evidence.
Right, because gathering the documents is only half the battle. We need to make sure it all gets submitted correctly.
Exactly. You can have an amazing track record, top-notch qualifications, but if the submission is messy or confusing, well, it can really hurt your chances. It's like having a beautifully wrapped gift, but with the wrong address on it. It might never reach the right person.
Okay, so how do we make sure our metaphorical gift gets to the right place? A&D makes a good impression.
Let's break it down. First, you gotta know your submission methods. Electronic submissions are becoming more common, especially for larger contracts. Often, they use dedicated platforms or portals.
So no more giant envelopes full of papers.
Not always, no. Smaller contracts might still use paper submissions. Sometimes electronic submission is just the first step, then you have to send paper copies too. Always double-check the tender documentation for those specific instructions.
Makes sense. No point in building this amazing digital presentation if they want a hard copy, right?
What about deadlines and required formats? Crucial. Missing a deadline, even by a minute, can get you disqualified. The tender documentation will spell out the exact date and time. Pay close attention. Sometimes it's down to the hour, sometimes it's about when they physically receive it in the mail.
Deadlines are serious business. Got it. Okay, what about formats? Should we be submitting PDFs, Word documents, or something else altogether?
Again, check the tender documentation. They'll usually lay out exactly what formats they accept for each document. It keeps things consistent, makes it easier for them to handle everything.
It's streamlining, right?
Exactly. So let's say you've got all your documents prepped, formats are right, deadlines are triple-checked, and you're ready to hit that submit button. Take a deep breath. One last thing.
Oh, what's the final step?
Review. Proofread everything carefully. I can't emphasize this enough. And if you can, get a fresh pair of eyes on it too. Someone else might catch mistakes you missed. Typos, grammar, making sure the information is all consistent.
Like a final dress rehearsal before the big opening night.
Perfect analogy. You don't want a tiny comma out of place or a missing page number to overshadow all that hard work.
And it's not just about avoiding embarrassment. It shows a lack of attention to detail. It can make them question your professionalism overall,
Absolutely. A well-prepared, polished submission, it shows you're committed to excellence. That goes a long way.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into proving you've got the right stuff for those Czech public contracts, here's the takeaway. It's a journey for sure, but one you can definitely navigate. Careful planning, thorough preparation, attention to detail.
And remember, you're not alone. Resources are out there, and Check the Tenders will keep bringing you those insights and tips to help you along the way.
Until next time, folks, happy bidding.